Yes, it's time for the world this week. 7 days, 4 Paris-based correspondents, 1 hour with us. Vivienne Walt of Time Magazine, how are you?
Very good.
Nice to see you. Nice to see Paul Taylor of the Reuters news agency. Let's say hello as well to George KAZOLIAS of partner station AITV and Claude GUIBAL, of senior correspondent at Radio France. The world this week, where you can join the conversation throughout the week on Facebook and on Twitter. Our hashtag TWTW. Until Monday, France's cabinet looked a lot like a different beast. 38 ministers and junior ministers. That was last week. But after a historic drubbing in local elections, this Friday, the Socialists unveiling a slimmed-down team. There you see it. 16 ministers, 17 if you include new Premier Manuel Valls. True, the junior ministers won't be announced until next week. That list could get longer. But still, it's downsized. And the new faces include a very familiar one, Ségolène Royal, 2007 presidential candidate, former partner of President Hollande, the mother of his 4 children, in charge of a ministry of ecology and energy. When you look at this list, Claude GUIBAL, is it a change?
What change? You only have 2 new ministers, I guess, So it's maybe a diet. There are obviously swaps, but it's not real change. I mean, obviously, the choice of Manuel Valls had to fit with the need of pleasing also the left wing of the Socialist Party. So you have people like Arnaud Montebourg or Benoît Hamon who had been appointed on big ministries.
Because Valls very much a centrist. He's not from the left wing of the party.
No, he's not. He's not. He was very tough on crime and immigration also. So you have these 2 faces. I mean, and what he has done with Arnaud Montebourg is quite an interesting move, because Arnaud Montebourg was the only one to reverse him in the polls, and now is controlling him with this new and big ministry, which is economy.
Some have called it a German-like solution, where you have a finance minister. He'll be the one going to Brussels. That's the former Labour minister, Michel Sapin. And Montebourg, who now has an economy portfolio, which we don't usually see in France, Paul.
Well, a German solution which does not necessarily carry with it a guarantee of German efficiency. Yes, it's true that in Germany you have this split between the minister who looks after public finances and the minister who looks after the economy, which often includes energy. That's not the case in France. But the real question, I think, is this going to give any impetus at all to the economic reforms which the European Union and France's partners and the business community say that France badly needs? And
the replacement there of what the previous premier, a loyal foot soldier, by this more charismatic guy, is that going to bring that?
Well, it ought to bring more energy and discipline and focus to the government. This guy has spent most of his time in political PR. He was the spokesman for Hollande's campaign. He was the spokesman for Ségolène Royal's presidential campaign. He was Lionel Jospin's kind of media advisor. So he knows he's very expert in getting a focused message across. He's been very frustrated, I think, with the fact that the Socialist Party, when it was in opposition, didn't reform itself and go through the kind of modernization that Britain's Labour Party did, that the Democratic Party in the United States did, and so on. And that's where he stands. But whether he will actually be able to put into practice what he stands for, or whether there will be endless compromise and fudges, which is in the kind of political tradition of President Hollande, remains to be seen. The pressure from Brussels will be strong.
Pressure from Brussels. We're going to talk about a little bit later on, a bit more about this issue of France's new left, whether it really can redefine itself. But Vivienne Walt, the foreign press, it's all been about one person, Ségolène Royal.
Well, the foreign press is, endlessly fascinated with François Hollande's love life. Who would have thought when he was elected nearly 2 years ago that this man would provide, juicy copy? But it's, it seems to me that bringing Ségolène back is a little bit like being back in his comfort zone, even though it seems to be kind of complicated for him personally. But here's somebody who knows very, very well, and who, in a way, might provide him with some sort of, a kind of, in a way, a kind of go-between a little bit. I mean,
all right, comfort zone. I'm going to interrupt you there because the first cabinet meeting had yet to be held, and already Royal had courted controversy. France woke up Friday morning finding out that she'd come out in favor of scrapping an eco-tax on trucks.
Punishment. We shouldn't be taxing people who might not have a choice when it comes to taking eco-friendly transport.
But I mean, if I can just tap into something Claude said, but I really agree that here.
But bringing her back, is that the comfort zone?
Well, we'll see. But I think that what's really striking is that the election was so dramatic. It was such an absolute evisceration of the government. And yet, here you have the same faces again. There's such a lack of real fresh blood there. There's such a lack of reaching across and sort of bringing in some real conservatives, maybe one or two faces who would really kind of make people think that that the president is really kind of serious about changing direction.
And George KAZOLIAS, much has been made of the fact that Ségolène Royal, ecology minister, she was already ecology minister way back in 1992.
Yes. Well, I was just thinking as you were talking, Vivienne, about how many of the faces we saw so much younger 22 years ago, and there they are again. I wanted to come back to something that was said a little bit earlier. Sapin, even before he goes to Brussels, where's the first place he's going? He's going to go see Schäuble in Germany on Monday, right?
Because the new finance minister.
Yeah, because they're not going to meet their guarantees, their promises again on the deficit and on the debt, but I don't think and that's why he's going to Germany, because I don't think anybody in Europe wants to rock the boat in France before European elections in May, and so I think that between now and May, as far as the deficit and the debt and all the economic things that are going on, I think the Europeans are going to let Hollande and Valls go easy. After the European elections in May, things will get very tough.
All right. If Royal, by the way, wants to hog headlines, as she already has, she's going to have to compete with the new prime minister, 51-year-old Manuel Valls, Barcelona-born, who at the Interior Ministry made himself France's most popular politician. And on Tuesday, he sounded a bit like a man in a hurry when he took the reins from predecessor Jean-Marc Ayrault.
The President of the Republic has a roadmap to go even further, even faster, and of course to answer the call for justice and social justice in our country, which I know is important to you. A call which the last local elections revealed to an even greater extent.
Claude GUIBAL, the big criticism of the previous government was there were too many mixed messages, too many people from different factions of the party. Does it make things clearer having Manuel Valls at the top after that statement that the president made at the start of the year that I am a social democrat?
I think that's the message, and that, as you said, it's tout change, rien ne change. It's a bit back to the basics. At the very beginning, when he was elected, François Hollande promised to stimulate the economy, promised many changes, and then he backed up. And with Manuel Valls, I think he wants to say that now we are going back from the start, a brand new start, but with the same old faces. So that's the problem, because once again we are in, mixed messages.
Do you agree with that, Vivienne Wall?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't see that the will to really power through these reforms has really changed. And think, for example, as a little bit of a contrast, Italy, where you have Renzi coming in, and who really looks like, he's serious. He might still not be able to do it, but he's come in and he's determined. He says if he doesn't get what he wants, if he doesn't manage to totally cut waste, and he's sold off all the Maseratis on eBay. that he's going to quit. And bravo.
Yeah,
of
but
course, it might not help the country, but you don't hear Manuel Valls say that. These faces are kind of grafted permanently into the political system.
Yeah, but if we look at the waste in Italy, we see that Renzi has a lot more to work with than the French do. I mean, I was looking at, like you just mentioned, Maseratis, but there are so many things.
Why the
list
government
is
owned
incredible.
Maseratis is a different story. But
No, but there's just so many places he can cut and reduce and get popular support for that. François Hollande and Manuel Valls have a lot less room to maneuver. And let's not forget, even though the debt is enormous in Italy, they're below the 3% in their deficit. The French are not.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that what the French need to do is to bring down the overall burden of public spending on the economy, which is very unpopular here because it immediately will start to touch people's benefits, people's health care, and so on. And people live remarkably cushioned lives in France, and they're used to it, and they regard that as their right. They regard it as the French social model. They have a president who's telling them, I'm going to modernize the economy without touching the French social model, and he hasn't really had yet, I think, the courage to tell them the truth. And there's sort of a reality gap between the government and its supporters, which tend to think that they've already made enormous reforms, and everybody else outside of France and people in the French business community who think that they've done sort of half measures, that, all right, they've managed to achieve some reforms without bringing the unions into the streets, as has happened under past leaders, but the fact is they haven't done the business. Public spending is still over 57% of the national income. That's the biggest of anywhere in Europe. And the tax burden is very high. People are fed up with the taxes. It's counterproductive because it's not bringing in more revenue. And they need to sort of jump over their shadow. And France is particularly resistant to change, even under a sort of soggy, social democratic, everybody's friend president.
Right,
and even when he didn't have to, I mean, when he took power, Sarkozy had already raised the retirement age.
Yeah.
He could have left it there, instead he brought it back down. So even when other people did the dirty work for him.
I mean, it seems to me one of the major problems in France is that there's so little sort of cross-pollination between the private sector and the public sector. You have a government always that has very little, if any, real life experience in the private business sector. Yeah. And at this point, it's given the situation that the country is facing, it seems like that's what's really needed.
Yeah. All right, and Valls, the comparisons to his Italian counterpart have been going on all week. 39-year-old Matteo Renzi, who Viv mentioned earlier, on Monday, telling senators in Italy to approve a major institutional reform bill that will greatly reduce their own powers. Approve it or else.
As all the votes in the Senate will be recorded, I'll give you the names and surnames of those who want to stop the change. The people who want to stop the change are not simply those who think differently from us. Those who try to stop the change are those who, after 30 years of discussions concerning the perfect system of two-chamber legislature, say, but this isn't the real problem. I repeat, we respect others' opinions, but I believe that at a certain point, there is a duty to make a decision.
Everyone says Manuel Valls is a good communicator. What do you think of Matteo Renzi?
Wow. Is he a model for Manuel Valls? What do you think? I mean...
Paul Taylor, everyone's saying that it's the new Schroeder and Blair.
Well, in terms of communication skills, I think both of them are up there. The question is whether Valls will be up there in terms of determination to actually change things, because Schroeder, who made himself very unpopular at the time, who didn't get re-elected because he'd done what in hindsight is widely seen as the right thing, and his party is still languishing and down around 25% support, never really regained the working class votes that it lost over his reforms of the unemployment benefit system and so on. But the fact is, German unemployment is at 5%, French unemployment is at about 11%, and that's the official figure, and the real figure is higher.
George KAZOLIAS, we're getting a lot of reactions. One here, Valls considered near to the right side, Renzi too. Where is the left?
Well, that's interesting. You know, I'm going to be watching the Socialist Party very, very closely, because between now and the elections in May, I'm wondering how many socialists are going to consider that this party only has socialist in its name and are going to be looking elsewhere. It's going. The amazing thing is, before going into the elections, Hollande and Sarkozy, and after the scandal with Strauss-Kahn, we were wondering whether there was a socialist party left at all. They had to split so much, and I don't really think that there's much holding that party together. The people in the government might be very close together, but within the party, there are a lot of pulling at different sides. So I'm going to be watching very closely what the left of the Socialist Party is going to be doing in the next few weeks.
The Socialist Party is a party of elected officials. If you look at the membership, somewhere more than a quarter of all the members of the party are elected officials. And a lot of them just lost their seats last weekend because they're mainly local elected officials. And they're a party of largely public sector rather than private sector workers. The thing is, there are alternatives, obviously, on the left. There's an anti-globalization, anti-Europe left, and there's an anti-globalization, anti-Europe far right.
Paul, even among social democrats, there's a lot of talk that now with Renzi in Italy and Valls in France, there can be this movement to say, all right, yes to reforms, but let's cool it on reducing the deficit too fast.
Well, that would make sense if indeed it was a genuine yes to reforms. The difference is that Renzi wants a little bit of budget leeway so he can do very bold reforms. And France wants a bit of budget leeway, yet again, for the third or fourth time since this system was created, in order to sort of drag out and do as little reform as they can possibly get away with, I think.
All right, whether or not you answer, how you answer to Brussels, how you negotiate with Brussels, that's been very topical this week across the channel. We'll be talking about it. Stay with us. This is The World This Week.